Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. Hello, my name is Carl E. Long, and I am your host for tonight's episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. So glad that you are listening in with me again. I'm glad to have you here. So, I'm doing my normal thing. It's late at night, it is past midnight, and that's when I get most of my thoughts and that's when I do most of my meditation and prayer, and that's when I get the unction to just speak on things. So this is what I do. So here I am again. So guys, today I have just been kind of, I don't know, I'm in some kind of a mode because I keep hearing things, and as I do research for the podcast and I learn new things, it just upsets me. So I've got to figure out a way how to shake this off. I got to figure out a way how to shake this off so that I am not always being affected by my research. But it gets me upset. It gets me in my feelings. It gets me to thinking. It gets me to stress smoking, which I need to quit, things like that. But I realize that it's an important thing to do and to talk about. And I'm just praying that someone out there is listening to me, listening to me. People are starting to engage, which is good. But I hope that I am giving a message to someone to understand what we have going on here. So, in America right now, because this is unique, guys. This is very unique what's going on here in America. And it's not anything that we thought would ever happen, but it's here. So today's title is voter fraud. Is voter suppression the real voter problem in America? Voter fraud, voter suppression. So you would have one party, the Republican Party, who would say that they can't get a fair election because we're always cheating and then there's fraud out there. Okay? That's one side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is Democrats, where we're saying that Republicans, you're trying to suppress the vote, you're trying to keep people from voting, and all this other stuff like that. So you would think that these are equal arguments, and one outweighs the other in one way or another, or they're equal, but they're not. So first of all, let's just dispose that there is no voter fraud in America. Nobody is putting together any kind of militia or organization to go out there and stuff ballot boxes for one particular candidate or another. Nobody's doing that as far as voter fraud. But what somebody is doing is they are doing voter suppression. They are putting laws in place that are affecting the normal American to vote. There are cyber attacks to our voting system. There are all sorts of things of people trying to mess up who is leading this country. Think about that for a moment. Power is a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing. And being right is an awesome feeling, but being wrong, I guess it's not a good feeling. So there is such a fight to control what people think, what people do, how people make money in this country that it is crazy. It is just crazy. And you have to think about, you know, I'm a Democrat, and I've always felt that Democrats have always been the party of the people. We want people to live the American dream, just according to the way our Constitution says that we should. And then you have the Republicans. They say they want the same thing too, but it's an exclusive club because if I go down all of the values of what the Republican Party stands for, I can't find that many things that I care about, you know? And then people would say the same thing for Democrats, but I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I believe Democrats spend a lot of time trying to put laws in place that really help the American people. Yeah, so let's just talk about party success. I just had to look up and see just which one of the parties have been the most successful out of the two. So here we go. Of both political parties, Republican and Democrat, who has been the most successful in getting bills turned into law? All right, I'm asking my buddy Chat GPT. Great question, it says. When it comes to which party has been more successful in turning bills into law, the answer isn't entirely black and white because it depends on a few key factors. Whose party is in control? The party that controls both Congress and the presidency. Over the past 50 years, Democrats have controlled all three House, Senate, and presidency more than the Republicans, and doing major legislation pushes like New Deal, Great Society, or Obamacare, right? Legislative productivity, here's a rough breakdown. Democrats tend to introduce and pass more social policy and regulatory legislation, especially on health care, education, and civil rights. Republicans tend to be more successful in tax reform, deregulation, and military defense related laws. Okay? So I guess that helps a little bit, but the Republican side is it's very selfish. All right? Numbers and research based insight. According to data from the Congressional Research Science and Government Track, when Democrats have unified control, they introduce and pass more bills overall. However, Republicans often focus on fewer, broader impact bills like the 2017 tax cuts, which who did that help, and the Jobs Acts of 1996 welfare reform. Now, here's some notable Democratic legislative wins. The Social Security Act was Democratic, the Civil Rights Act, the Affordable Care Act, and, of course, Joe Biden's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Notable legislation, Republican wins. The American with Disabilities Act, George Bush Sr. did that one. I can't believe he did that one. Tax Reform Act, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that's Trump. And No Child Left Behind, that's Bush Jr. That was a good one. That was bipartisan. Democrats have historically passed more laws when in power, especially on social policy. Republicans have often passed fewer but major structural laws in areas like taxes and defense. So you tell me, which one of the party is the party of the people? Success depends on the control of Congress and the presidency and political strategy. Yes, that's what it depends on right there. So I think that if you're just looking at the numbers, Democrats are just more successful with getting bills into law and they govern a lot better. Republicans are not good at governing at all. They're just not. They're not good at governing, and the bill's short because right now they haven't passed a bill. And they have not passed a bill yet. They have not. So today's subject is about voter suppression and voter fraud and all the things that make up elections. And I am particularly invested in this subject because there have been two major stories that have come out about what happened in the 2024 election. We have one election group that has done a complete audit of the election of 2024 and found some anomalies that don't make sense. And the other person, he has found that there have been an abnormal amount of people that have been taken off rolls, denied the right to vote, and there is voter suppression going on everywhere. So in my assessment of that, there is no way that Donald Trump won the presidency like he did. There's no way. With all the stuff that's going on, he didn't win fair and square. He just didn't. And unfortunately, we didn't pursue this. The Democrats didn't pursue this like Trump did. They did recounts. Recounts is not what we're talking about. We're talking about other anomalies and things that have affected the outcome of this election. And there are facts to prove this stuff. Why isn't these stories on the main news? Why aren't we talking about this? Can somebody explain to me why this is not on the main news? Breaking news. Why is this not being talked about? Why are neither one of these guys being given network time? They've been going on podcasts and going on different podcasts for people and little small shows and things like that, but no one has talked to them from mainstream. And I don't understand that, because I am a logical person and I know when I can see facts. And this is not anything that's made up, guys. This is not anything that's made up. There are facts to both of these things that are happening with our elections. And to me, until I see someone actually show this on a major network and talk to one of these guys, I'm going to keep talking about it until somebody actually does talk. So let me just talk about the two types of voters that we have out there. So I'm going to play a little bit of Roland Martin had one of the guys from the election group that has audited the election in the swing states, and it's a 39-minute thing. I'm not going to play all of it. I'm just going to play the beginning so that you can hear what the whole premise of it is. So let's just take a listen, and then we'll come back and discuss here.
Pam Bondi announced they were disbanding the unit that specifically is charged with ensuring foreign interference does not impact our elections. Yeah, that's real. Now there are fresh concerns regarding what happened in 2024 presidential election, specifically in Clark County, Nevada. A lot of people were concerned with what was happening there because they were shocked with the Republican turnout in Clark County. They said, hey, significant number of union workers there. It has always been a Democratic stronghold. Now a nonpartisan group called the Election Truth Alliance, or ETA, has wrapped up their independent investigation of voting data from Clark County. They found some unusual patterns that they say could point to, quote, potential vote manipulation. Nathan Taylor, the executive director of the Election Truth Alliance, he joins us right now. So Nathan, just explain to us how y'all define this potential vote manipulation. What did y'all see in terms of these numbers?
Thank you so much for having me. So in terms of what we were looking at in Clark County, Nevada, they published just after the election their vote record, their cast vote record, and that goes down to the tabulation machines and the three types of voting. So mail-in, early vote, and election day. And so what we did is we looked at the statistical distribution of that data, and we compared those three types. And we saw that mail-in, it looks statistically normal. Normal distribution, a bell curve pattern. We saw that election day didn't look very anomalous at first, but then we looked at early voting. And early voting is where a majority of the votes were cast during the election for Clark County, Nevada. And when we looked at it, we actually pulled out the distribution, and we saw it shows statistical evidence of potential manipulation. And what that means is a portion of both candidates' votes look like they could have been changed. And we see that because instead of a bell curve, it comes out more of a Russian tail, as we would call it. And so we delved deeper, and we actually pulled data for Washoe County, Nevada. That's the second most populous location. And a little bit about my background. I work in cybersecurity. I was a 25 Bravo computer tech specialist in the Army Reserves, got my degree in network security, and then commissioned at the Army National Guard. And so I worked data analysis for my normal job before kind of stepping into this role and helping found and run the Election Truth Alliance. And so what was concerning about this election and led us to looking into the actual data was, as you mentioned, 7 swing states kind of popped up after the election, and we thought that was strange, given some of the polls, given some of the other analysis. And when we dove deeper, now we're seeing the potential for the vote counting machines to have been manipulated. And so the main concern is the type of manipulation we're seeing in Clark County, Nevada. It's not unique to Clark County, Nevada. We've done analysis on other locations. We're looking at Pennsylvania right now. We were looking at Wisconsin. We were looking at Florida. We were looking at Texas and California. And so many of these higher population centers in these states exhibit the same indications at a higher level, and that's a drop-off vote abnormality, where, for example, one party at the presidential level, they get a certain amount of votes. And then you look at the next down ballot for their party, like the senator or the governor or the superintendent, and you find that those lower positions have more votes than the president. And that's very concerning. And that ultimately also led to us diving a little deeper. So we did provide some graphics, but I don't really think we need the graphics just to kind of talk about some of the potential.
That's why a lot of people were asking. They were like, "Wait a minute, hold up. How did he win? How did Trump win all of the battleground states, but the only two places the Republican candidate won in the Senate was Ohio and Pennsylvania? They lost in Wisconsin, they lost in Michigan, they lost in Nevada, they lost in Arizona." And there was no Senate race on the ballot in North Carolina and in Georgia. And in fact, when you look at North Carolina, Democrats won governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and secretary of state.
And you're probably wondering, why did I make her a carrot? Well, it turns out that
All right, so I was going to show you just a little bit of what that was about. It goes on for 39 minutes. They go back and forth and they talk. But you heard the premise. So here's the deal. The premise is this little bit of an anomaly that happened on Election Day only happened in the swing states. It was consistent. And it looked, that drop-off vote that we have, let me tell you what a drop-off vote is. Let's just put the definition. The term drop-off vote refers to the votes cast for a presidential candidate versus the votes cast for down-ballot candidate of the same party. The term highlights the number of voters who voted for one candidate, such as for president, but skipped in voting for one or more candidates, such as low races, like the candidates for Senate or House or race, split their ticket for voting for a presidential candidate belonging to one political party and a candidate from a different party down ballot. All right, so that's the concern. Everybody thinks that Trump thinks that he was so popular that people just came in just to vote on him. That's all it was. Really? And then they came all the way to Clark County, which is the Democratic hub of Nevada. So we're saying that all of these Republican people came all the way from the rural Nevada, and they decided to vote in Las Vegas. And they went to the most Democratic voting hub that there is in Vegas. You can vote anywhere in Nevada on any election. So people say, well, you can vote anywhere in Nevada. But yeah, but why did everybody come to Las Vegas? Why did everybody come to Las Vegas at the Democratic hub, and all these Republicans voted just for Trump, and then they left, and they didn't really vote for anybody down ballot, or they did, but it would split. It was Democrats the rest of the way down. Does that make sense? I am a conservative voter who wants to vote for Trump, but I'm going to vote for all Democrats. So that means that's the way an independent voter votes? No, it's not. And they're going to come all the way to Las Vegas just to vote? Probably not. I live in Dallas. That's like saying someone came all the way from East Texas, Tyler, Texas, just to vote in Dallas. Do you know what I mean? And that's 97 miles away. And so this is what they're saying. And this is not a recount, guys. Let's get this straight. This is an audit of how trends work, how people vote. In the general election, they didn't see this. It was just the early voting, which is weird, all right? So that's what happened on that. So let me just give you a summary of the voting analysis there. So after approximately 250 early voting ballots were processed by a voting machine, a shift is observed in the reporting voting patterns. Instead of a chaotic expected distribution, the vote percentages start to shift more heavily in Trump's favor. This pattern is not found on election day. Guys, the way this thing is working is something like an AI could do, or some kind of a program could do, or anything, but it is not the nature of a human being. Do y'all get that? So this is why I don't understand why nobody is talking about this. And of course, I know we can't get Trump out of the election because we certified it. It's been certified. There's nothing we can do about it. But the midterms are coming up. This could happen again. This could happen again. So that is why this is so important that somebody talks about this and they bring this guy on the shows and talk about it. Everybody's afraid to say, because Trump is the one that made all of the stolen election thing. Everybody's afraid to say anything because they don't want to feel like they're Trump. Because we've always said that our elections are safe. And they should be. If there is not some kind of unknown Russian tail going through our election. Now here's my theory. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. My theory is the reason why Trump is so beholden to Putin is because I think his old buddy boy did something. And I think that the dear old Donald Trump may know what he did. And he may have told him he did it. So therefore, I mean, did you see the list of tariffs that came out there? Russia and Belarus was nowhere on there. Why? Every other country, even small countries like Sri Lanka were on there, but no Russia. And he really hasn't said why. And then I think he said something about, well, they have sanctions. No, they need tariffs too. They need tariffs as well, on the record. Whether they use them or not, they need to be on the record. They weren't included. Strange, right? So this is why I won't leave this subject, because that happened, guys. It happened. And I mean, I work in computers, and I used to work in systems, and the numbers don't lie, guys. Trends are trends. This just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. Okay, so that's one kind of a fraud there. Okay, and he referred to this called a Russian tail. Let me tell you what a Russian tail is. He referred to, you ever heard of a bell curve? You learn of that in your job and when you're doing stats and whatever in economics, bell curve. A Russian tail. A Russian tail is a pattern that shows an inexplicable spike in vote distribution that is statistically unlikely based on human voting behavior. It also resembles a phenomenon referred to as a Russian tail, where an anomalous deviation, I don't know why I couldn't say that word, from normal distribution can be an indicator of unfair elections, such as a spike may indicate election results falsification, particularly if only one candidate appears to benefit. More information about voter turnout relative to county/precinct and additional analysis may be needed in order to definitely confirm the presence of the phenomenon in Clark County early voting. The Russian tail has appeared in elections wherein Russian election manipulation is suspected. Recently, it has been cited as evidence of Russian meddling in the 2024 Georgian parliamentary elections. That's over in Russia. So you see what I'm saying? And that's what he referred to it as. There's a Russian tail going on here. You can see it. It's very easy to see when you look at the stats and the voting trends. I know this all sounds Greek to everybody, but humans don't vote like that. Not in that percentage. And why does it only happen in the swing states, in early voting? There was not a mass amount of drop-off voting in other states. Why didn't we see that in California? Why didn't we see that in Texas? We saw some in California, but not like this. So they tried to sprinkle it around a little bit to try to make it look normal, but it wasn't. So That's my theory. It's not conspiracy, it's facts. It's facts. Okay? Somebody needs to bring this guy on. They need to bring him on. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, everybody needs to be, somebody needs 60 minutes. Somebody needs to be interviewing these guys. Okay? So you wonder why black people. So I'm talking to all of my white brothers and sisters that feel like they've been left behind. They feel like reverse racism is happening now. I'm talking to you. And you wonder why. Because, this is what y'all tell us. There is no racism in America anymore. Why don't y'all stop? You've gotten everything. Stop, stop, stop. We're not going to stop until things like this stop. Things like this stop. We're not going to stop. No. So does everybody think that just racism just all of a sudden just went away? That's what they're saying. It just suddenly disappeared. You mean to tell me that all of the guys and people that lived in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, all those racist people that had all those laws and celebrated them, they've all of a sudden just become perfect people and they don't believe like that anymore? Really? I'm supposed to believe that? No. Let me tell you why. All right, so here's a good reason to know that the MAGA world is getting what they want. So they would have you to believe, because they're cowards, that the reason they voted for Donald Trump was because the economy. That was the number one thing. And immigration, right? The economy and immigration, right? Wrong. All right, Trump said he was going to fix the economy on day one. Now he's telling them it's going to be a little bit of pain here and there, and they're taking it like nothing. Is it because they love Trump that much? Or is it because that wasn't the reason to begin with? They like a leader that has their values of separation of the races, bringing up all of this crap, making the white race a superior race again, taking us back in time. They're going, we're back. From where? They want a leader like that. And Donald Trump checks all the boxes. So even though he says that your prices are going to go up and everything else, they're okay with it. And the reason they're okay with it, not because they trust Donald Trump, is because that's not the reason why they voted for him. Come on, y'all. Let's just talk truth here. Let's just talk truth. I'm not saying that everybody voted. There are some people that actually got duped into thinking that he's a good economist. Guys, look at his business practices. The man has filed bankruptcy how many times? He's got several failed ventures. He's not that good at it. He's got Trump Tower and a few. He's not that good at it. He really is not. If you think about it. Oh, well. So that's what you have on that. So I'm still asking the question, why isn't anybody talking about this? I don't understand. And when we talk about voting for the economy and how Democrats got it wrong and everything like that, quit bashing Democrats about that. We talked about the economy. As far Kamala, that's all she talked about. Helping you with child care, giving you a tax credit, helping you with your student loans, trying to get things done. All of that was about the economy and putting money back in your track, going after price gougers. That was economy. She talked about it a lot. And if I hear one more supposed Democrat bash her in the Democratic Party for not staying on message, they were on message. But what they weren't doing, they weren't conniving and lying to people like Donald Trump was. So because we couldn't beat that, so now we were off message. They weren't off message. I mean, maybe the women's right to choose was put a little bit higher than it probably should have been. Because right now we see that they don't give a damn about women dying in this country. Who would have thunk that? Who would have thunk it? Yeah, I said thunk it. That they don't care about our women dying. It's not a big deal. The economy was bigger. Wow. Good old America. Forget about women going to trying to get proper prenatal care and dying in childbirth and all sorts of things. Let's just get some money in our pockets. How about that? That's more important. Who have we become? So do not come to me about Democrats. I'm so sick of hearing that message. Democrats, quit listening to that bull crap and quit looking for ways to figure out you're talking to the right people. These elections were stolen. We won these elections. We won them. I'm sorry if it sounded like Donald Trump stole an election, but we're not going to storm the Capitol for sure. We're not doing that. But that's the reason why nobody's talking about it, because they're afraid to be labeled as a conspiracy theory. This is not conspiracy. There are some facts related to this stuff, and somebody needs to look into it. Wow. Yeah. And then there's been a lot of pushback on Barack and Kamala coming out and talking, and Kamala saying she told you so, and Barack saying, if I did these things, what could I be able to get away with the stuff Trump said? No, we know you couldn't, Barack, because you'd be put up in chains and probably hogtied and drug. Who knows? But what I'm trying to say here is quit blaming Democrats, and do not blame Kamala. I will kill you about Kamala because she, not literally kill, I will kill somebody. I'm just saying, because she worked her butt off. She worked her butt off, guys. She really did. She put our party back together. Do y'all not remember the unity and all the great stuff that was going on? Do y'all not remember that? There was a rhythm. There were sold out stadiums. Do y'all remember that Donald Trump couldn't even fill a stadium after a while? And y'all believe he won the election? No. And yes, I know there are a whole bunch of my brothers, black and white, who didn't think a woman should be in that sort of position, but it wasn't enough of them to make her lose. It was enough of them to make a lot of noise. Do you know? So quit blaming Democrats for that. Yeah. So the problem was that Trump won by lies and manipulation, and the Democrats couldn't do that. So that's where we lost. We couldn't keep up with the lies and manipulation. We kept getting our hands slapped. We couldn't talk about anything about him because he got his darn ears shot at. We couldn't talk about Project 2025 because he disavowed it. Lies. So we were just pretty much just silenced. But I will say this, and this is something that Democrats, I give you for free. Trying to put Donald Trump down and what he does not work. Period. Because his loyalists are his loyalists. And independents, we don't even care about them. Don't even work on independence. Those are the only ones that we look to change, because you're never going to change MAGA. But going after Donald Trump and what he does, it's not working. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because the man said it himself, and he's right. He could shoot somebody in the middle of the day and people would still vote for him. So that was a missed strategy. We should have just left him alone. My strategy with Donald Trump would have been ignore him completely. Don't even give him any airtime. That would have killed him. But no, media. Y'all had him on every day with those lies. You were just letting him, just normalized him, the whole bit. So there you have it. Oh, well. So I got off on a tangent there, but I wanted you to hear about the other way that this election was stolen. And this was based on voter suppression. So let me let you hear this guy, Shocking Proof, with Greg Palast. He has a great, you have to go to Greg Palast, Palast, Palast.com, and you need to watch the movie. that he did. He got a bunch of support from stars. I saw Jamie Foxx on there, Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Sheen on getting this information. This is about what's going on in the South, in Georgia, and some other states. So let's listen to what he says. I'm going to play this in its entirety and then I'll come back. All right? Let's listen.
If not for vote suppression tactic, Kamala Harris would have won.
Our buddy Greg Palast is with us. Who actually won or lost the 2024 election for president? Greg, welcome back to the. I should mention you are the Guardian, New York Times reporter, author of The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. Your latest film is Vigilantes, Inc. And GregPalast.com is your website. Hey, Greg.
Hey, glad to be with you, Tom.
Well, thank you. So who won or who lost the election?
It's real simple. If not for vote suppression tactics, that's a fancy word for shafting people of color out of their vote, young people out of their vote, Kamala Harris would have won 3,565,000 votes. That's the number of voters that were denied the right to vote because they were purged or they were challenged or they had their provisional ballot thrown out. Let me give you some of the numbers. The reason I'm giving you numbers, and I've waited so long to make this report, is that I have to get the numbers from the government agencies, particularly something we call the Elections Assistance Commission. So people don't realize, I used to be a professor of statistics. I was a forensic economist. This is my specialty, the numbers, which I usually did for attorneys general and the U.S. Department of Justice and other government agencies. And so these are calculations I would do, and I have done for federal courts. So we had, are you ready for this? According to the Elections Assistance Commission, the official numbers, we had 4,776,706 voters purged from the voter rolls wrongly. And I'm not making this up. I had the guys from that work with the Microsoft and Amazon go through every single purge name in two states, Georgia and Wisconsin. We took those two states. And we found, for example, in Georgia, that 198,000 voters, we actually have their names and addresses were wrongly removed from the voter rolls. And you'll be shocked, overwhelmingly voters of color. And in Wisconsin, almost every voter removed by the purge was either a black voter in Milwaukee or a student in Madison. We had this brand new business this year of vigilante voter challenges. We talked about that on the air, where for the first time, very first time, an individual voter like Greg Palast can say, Tom Hartman does not live in Portland. He shouldn't be allowed to vote. This is new. A third of a million, 317,000 voters were challenged by the beginning of August. NAACP said it was over 200,000 just Georgia alone by election day. We had 2.12 million mail-in ballots rejected, and that wouldn't mean anything if it were random. It's not random, Tom. According to the state of Washington, which did a study, you're 400% more likely to have your mail-in ballot rejected if you're black than if you're white. And Washington state has the least voter suppression of any state in the union. And according to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, which did a study, they found that the chance of your ballot being rejected, mail-in or in precinct, is 900% higher if you're black than if you're white. We have over 500,000 votes that were spoiled. That is, they said they couldn't be read. And again, it's very, very racial. We had 1.2 million provisional ballots rejected. People think, they get this, you go in and they say, oh, you've been challenged, you've been purged, or we can't find your name on the rolls. Here, fill out this provisional ballot. 43% of those ballots, according to the U.S. government, 43% of provisional ballots, and there were about 4 million in the last, or about 3 million in the last election. 43% of those were thrown in the garbage. Overwhelmingly voters of color, and in fact, if you're black, Hispanic, or Latino, or Asian American, the chance you'll be given a provisional ballot is 300% higher than if you're white. We're talking, there's some double counting here. The vote suppression factor is about 2.3%. Again, Kamala Harris would have even won the popular vote, 3.565 million extra votes. she would have won the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. These are pretty exacting calculations, Tom. And so she would have won with 286 electoral votes. Again, this is absent if we didn't have a vote suppression Jim Crow voting system. And I'm telling you, I work all over the world on elections, from Britain to Venezuela to Liberia. There's no other nation in the world, except for old apartheid South Africa, I mean, where we have a supposed democracies, where you have this racial, basically Jim Crow apartheid voting system, where you have massive, massive numbers of voters of color lose their vote. Also now, that's kind of widened out to, I found a massive number of young people. Again, that demographic is they're voters of color too. The color's blue because young voters, especially young women, that are targeted for the purges, to be sent to provisional ballots, had their registrations canceled or their votes disqualified, especially their mail-in ballots. NPR found that 1 in 7 mail-in ballots in the analysis they did were thrown in the garbage, overwhelmingly, again, by the government numbers, 400% more likely if you're black than if you're white. So this is how Trump won, by racial and other forms of vote suppression. That gave him the election. And unless we restart a voting rights movement in America, 2028's already decided. It'll be decided by Jim Crow, not by the voters.
It seems sometimes, Greg, that the whole conspiracy movement, it's got to be the voting machines. Oh, it's got to be, Starlink being in the middle. It's got to be Elon Musk. And I think Trump was trolling us a couple days ago when he basically congratulated Elon Musk on doing something with the vote counting machines in Pennsylvania. It almost seems like all of that is just a great distraction from what is actually happening and actually working for the GOP. I mean, they started this whole, squealing about brown people being illegal voters in the 60s with Operation Eagle Eye and with William Rehnquist, the guy who became the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. There's history here.
Well, yes. And in fact, in my film, Vigilantes, Inc., which, by the way, at gregpals.com, thanks Leonardo DiCaprio, you can download it or stream it for free. But we go back, we show you a clip from the 1920 film over 100 years ago, the film Birth of a Nation, where they show a white actor in blackface putting 2 ballots into a ballot box. So the accusation that black voters vote multiple times to steal elections is an old trope. But this time it came back 100 years later with the Trump group, True the Vote. And they used that to justify these new vigilante individual challenges. Again, they proudly proclaimed 317,886 challenges by the beginning of August. And this is brand new stuff. This has not been done since the Ku Klux Klan used this personal mass challenge business in 1946. This is the Klan plan. And Trump used this to massive effect, especially in Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. This was a massive attack on voters of color, especially. And we're not guessing about what color they are. We called up 800 of the challenged voters. Almost all of them were black, and a smattering of some young white people registered as Democrats. Obviously, they know your registration, they know who you are, and they know your zip code. So this is how it's been working again, they brought in a 1946 Klan plan. So there is a long history here. But we have now, and that was justified supposedly by black people from, you saw in the film from True the Vote, 2,000 Mules, where they said black men, whom they called mules, they showed them stuffing ballot boxes. And of course, they've been sued to a fare thee well because everyone that they showed on camera was a legal voter. They were just guilty of voting while black.
Yeah, and True the Vote ultimately had to apologize, didn't they, to avoid a lawsuit?
No, just the only people that Sinclair, which was their distributor, apologized and withdrew the film. But 10 million people have seen it.
Right.
They've made millions of dollars off this thing. But the worst thing is it resulted in a massive reduction in drop boxes and early voting, which is the main way that black people, especially in the South, vote. The vast majority of African Americans vote early or by mail. The majority of Democrats vote by mail. 51% more likely to send in your ballot by mail if you're a Democrat, which means 1 in 8 of your votes are going to be thrown in the garbage, just so you know, because it's very easy to come up with an excuse to disqualify a ballot. And if you go to gregpalast.com, or even better, go to Tom Hartman and read my article, you will meet people that I have met who, tell me their story. So these are not just numbers. These are people that, so for example, Major Gamaliel Turner, career military officer, 70 years old. He was not sent his mail-in ballot because he was challenged by a Republican Party official who said he didn't live in California. Well, he was assigned by the President of the United States as a military man to a base in California. Voting rights, the expert on Georgia voting purges, who wrote her PhD.
Greg, I got to pause you there. Can you stay with us for a bit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Hang on. It's 18. This is a hard break. I can't control. 18 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with Greg Palast. By the way, you can read his piece at hartmanreport.com. It's right at the top of the page. It's titled "Trump Lost, Vote Suppression Won." We'll be right back.
All right, so y'all heard Greg Palast. So I want you to go to his website, Greg Palast, PALAST.com, and look at his film on voter suppression. It's chilling. It's chilling. It had me so upset. I just watched it this morning. I mean, one of those laws is that say my name is Carl, so I can go up and say, hey, you, James, I'm challenging James Jones. I don't think he's a voter because he doesn't live here anymore. And during the challenge, your vote is taken off and researched or whatever. And you can't vote because you're in the challenge phase and you got to prove some stuff. But in the meantime, they'll give you a provisional ballot, which makes it look like you're voting, but you're really not, because those ballots end up in the trash. Most provisional ballots never make it. So you see, there's a plan of action with this crap, guys. Trust me. So let me tell you what I found on the Jim Crow. I just want to show you how this is parallel and what Jim Crow used to be, for those of you who are too young to know about it, or only had read a snippet about it in your history book, or you've probably never heard of it. Let me tell you what went on during the times before the Voting Rights Act was even signed. So let's look at this one here. What are some of the Jim Crow laws and requirements that kept black people from voting? Jim Crow laws in the American South created systematic barriers to keep black Americans from voting, especially between 1870s and 1960s. Here are some of the main tactics and laws used to suppress black voters. Literacy tests. They would give you these tests. Voters were required to pass reading and comprehension tests. Tests were often intentionally confusing, unfairly graded, or nearly impossible to pass, especially for black voters, even those who were literate. Some states required you to interpret complex part of the Constitution on the spot. I mean, this test wasn't given to everybody, just the black people. Do you get that? If I was white, did I have to take a test when I went to vote? No, I just voted. All right? So then there were poll taxes. Voters had to pay a fee to vote. How it suppressed black voters. Many black Americans and poor whites couldn't afford it. Legacy. It was outlawed by the 24th Amendment of 1964, Harper versus Virginia Board of Elections, 1966. So we always have to take stuff to the frickin' Supreme Court, and you wonder why we rely on the government, because that's the only way we can get things done. And you say that everything is okay. If it wasn't for the government and laws, nothing would be okay, people. Do you hear me? All you people that are thinking that we're there, we've arrived. All right. Okay, grandfather clauses exempted people from literacy tests or poll taxes if their grandfather could vote before the Civil War. How it suppressed black voters? Since black people couldn't vote before the Civil War, they were automatically excluded. That was declared unconstitutional in Gwynn versus the United States in 1915. They kept trying. They didn't want us to have to say anything. White primaries. Only white voters could participate in party primaries, especially in Democratic-controlled southern states. How it suppressed black voters, denied them a voice in the most critical part of the election process. That was outlawed by Smith versus Allwright in 1944. And then there's the almighty violence, voter intimidation violence. Threats, beatings, lynchings, and job loss were used to scare black people away from registering and voting, often enforced by groups like the Ku Klux Klan or even local law enforcement. There was no formal law made on this, but often tolerated or ignored by local authorities. So that's what used to happen, guys. Let's see, arbitrary registration requirements. There was like things, they would have these long wait lines, move polling places, and bureaucratic hurdles made it nearly impossible for black voters to register. So they would have these long lines, they were probably doing nothing but just making people stand outside until they just left. Many were denied outright or faced so much red tape they gave up. All this to keep us from voting. Voter suppression. This is what used to happen. And then the last one, is this the last one I think, is gerrymandering and electoral manipulation. This is still happening. District lines were redrawn to dilute black voting strength. How it suppressed black voters made it nearly impossible for them to elect candidates of their choice, even in majority black areas. So they would gerrymander and make it so they split our vote up, like maybe 4 ways. So there's no power. You have no power blocks for a candidate. Yeah. So the turning point, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed most of these practices, especially in states with a history of discrimination. It led to a massive increase in black voter registration and participation. Okay. So this is crazy, guys. Those were what happened back then. And what's happening now? We'll find out here. We're going to find out here. All right, so how do these new laws compare with some of these now in Georgia? So Georgia passed something called the Election Integrity Act of 2021, commonly known as Georgia's new voting law, has sparked considerable debate, with some critics likening certain provisions to historical Jim Crow era voter suppression tactics. Here's some things that they do. Voter identification requirements for absentee ballots. Georgia law mandates voters to provide a driver's license number or state ID number when requesting and returning absentee ballots. They make us do that in Texas now. You have to have a license. Jim Crow comparison. While not identical to literacy tests, this requirement could disproportionately affect minority voters who may be less likely to possess such identification, echoing past tactics that impose barriers to voting. Okay. And the other one they have is restrictions on distributing food and water to voters in line. This one was just stupid. Prohibits giving food or water to voters waiting in line within 100 feet of a polling place. This was just to keep us, I don't know what this one is for. But although not as overt as past intimidation tactics, this could discourage voters, particularly in minority communities where longer wait times are common, reminiscent of indirect methods used to support black total. Basically, they want you to stand there until you die. So if you get hungry, you're gonna just leave, so nobody can bring you food. All right. Now, then there was the reduction of ballot drop boxes. Georgia law limits the number of absentee ballot drop boxes and restricts their availability to early voting hours. Why can't the damn things just stay open? Do y'all see what I mean? These are the same thing. The Jim Crow comparison. Reducing access points can disproportionately impact urban areas with higher black populations, similar to historical practices of limiting polling places in black communities. Okay? And then here's another one. Shortened time frame to request absentee ballots. Cuts the period voters have to request absentee ballots. So, shortening this window may hinder voters who face challenges in navigating the voting process, akin to bureaucratic obstacles historically used to disenfranchise black voters. Yeah. It just keeps going on, guys. This is the new Jim Crow 2.0. Yeah. Changes to runoff election time. Georgia law shortens the runoff election period from 9 weeks to 4 weeks. Jim Crow comparison. Condensing the timeline could reduce voter mobilization efforts in minority communities, reflecting past strategies of limiting opportunities for black political. So basically, they're trying to cut the time. You don't have time to get down on the ground, as they call it, to talk to voters. They're just trying to get you in there. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Anything to keep us from voting. So legal and public reaction. Critics review on many civil rights groups argue that these provisions disproportionately affect black voters, drawing parallels to Jim Crow laws designed to disenfranchise African Americans. Proponents contend the law enhances election. Now, this is what the supporters think. This is what they think. Proponents contend that the law enhances election integrity and applies equally to all voters, asserting that comparisons to Jim Crow are exaggerated and politically motivated. Yeah, right. While Georgia's new voting law, does not reinstate the explicit racial barriers of the Jim Crow era, critics argue that certain provisions may have a disproportionate impact on black voters, evoking concern about voter suppression reminiscent of past Jim Crow laws. Do y'all see what I'm saying? That's Jim Crow 2.0. They're saying this for all people. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Really? So that's that. So let me go to the next part here. And so what are some of the Jim Crow laws and requirements that kept black people from voting in the South? That was the one I just did. I don't want to do that one. Let's do this one here. What about removing voters from rosters? Okay, great follow-up. Removing voters from rolls, often called voter roll purging, is one of the most controversial aspects of the recent voting laws, including in Georgia. Here's how it compares. Modern Georgia laws on voter roll removal under Georgia's recent election laws, including the Election Integrity Act of 2021, the state has continued and in some cases expanded efforts to clean voter rolls. Here's what it includes. Number one, it's the use it or lose it rule policy. Voters who don't vote in several consecutive elections and fail to respond to a mail notice can be removed from the rolls. Why? What is it going to hurt if I stay on the roll? What is it hurting? Disproportionately affects black, brown, and younger voters who move more often and skip elections. Mass purges. In 2017, Georgia removed over 500,000 voters, the largest single purge in the U.S. history at the time. Investigations showed that many of these removed were still eligible but didn't respond to mailings. Challenges to eligibility. The 2021 law allows individual citizens to challenge the eligibility of an unlimited number of voters. Wow. Comparison to Jim Crow era. Purging wasn't the main tool. Barriers and literal tests and poll tax were more direct. However, local officials did use manual roll manipulations to quietly remove black voters or never add them in the first place. So, guys, this is the problem that we have. This is the problem that we have. This is the problem. And you think about states like Georgia. Now, Georgia is one of those states. A lot of the southern states, guys, are still like they are. They put a mask on and they make you think everything is going right. But no, those people are still there. My pastor, I was having a conversation, not my pastor, one of my past pastors, not the current one. I had a conversation about how the young people were getting frustrated because it was so much old tradition in the church and whatever. And we were like, why won't they even try anything? Why won't they let us even do things, because the older people had a stronghold on the church. My pastor just basically said, Brother Galone, you're going to have to just wait because a lot of these people are going to have to die off before anything or change makes. And that's kind of true. A lot of these people just got to die and go away. because they're embedding this stuff in their children. But I think the younger generation is not caring about stuff like this. So we got a bunch of people that are still doing that, So still happening. Still happening. And think about Georgia. Georgia used to be a white mecca. I mean, because black people weren't successful in Georgia, but now Chocolate City is where some of the richest black people in the world live. Atlanta. And they hate that. Now, when you watch this documentary film by Greg LePast, you're going to notice a whole part in there about Brian Kemp, who's the governor now. You got to look at that, guys. You got to go to his website and check it out. It's a great film, and it'll make you understand more about what's going on in this country. Now, the only way to fix all this stuff, guys, is for them to pass this. The John Lewis Voting Rights Bill. Yep. This bill has been put on the floor, and it passed the floor, but they haven't put it in. Why not? This is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's supposed to help strengthen it, because the Voting Rights of 1965 is weak. Yeah. So the key provision was updated pre-clearance formula of the bill established a new formula to identify states and localities with a recent history of voting rights violations, requiring them to obtain federal approval before making changes to their voting procedures, because the states will do their own thing. Expanded scope of covered practices, changes to methods of elections that could dilute minority voting strength, redistricting plans that may negatively impact minority voters, implement of stricter voter identification requirements, and reduction in multilingual voting materials. This is some of the stuff that they're doing now. Changes that reduce, relocate, or consolidate. So this act is going to help with all of that stuff that goes on. We can't get it passed. You think we're going to get it passed now? No. Not at all. I mean, it went through the House, but the Senate didn't pass it. John Lewis would be so proud if we got that taken care of. Yes, he would. Yes, he would. But that's what we got going on, guys. So, asking the question, is voter suppression the real voter problem in America? It's one of them. It's huge. Until we get bills passed like the John Lewis Voters Rights Bill passed, this stuff is going to be going on forever, guys. It really is. Because we're like the only country that does our voting like we do. Why can't everybody just be registered with their license when they're 18? You automatically vote. You can vote. Why can't that happen? There's no fraud. If you have a legitimate Texas Department of Public Safety license, then you're legitimate. And if there are any people that cannot vote, like felons or green card people or illegal aliens or people that are not of citizens, then they have driver's license here because maybe they have work visas, whatever, then you put one of those restrictions on the thing. So if I can vote in America and I'm not, so maybe the background behind me is a different color when I go take my picture. Y'all see what I'm saying? There are ways to do this. There are ways to do this. Okay? Well, that was it, guys. And I want you to know that you can do some things. You can find the phone number to your congressman and your senator. And if you're not happy with something, tell them. They have to hear from you. They have to hear it from you. Because you may not be the only one that's been talking about the issue. So, thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. And please stay engaged. Stay engaged. Now, all of the election information, the study that was done on the audit in the swing states, I'll put a link in the podcast here if you want to read their full report. You can do that, and you can read the report that they did, and they presented to Kamala Harris and team. But right before the election got certified, but nobody called them. So there you go. So have a wonderful day, and until next time, bye now.